My guess at this time is probably the busiest session bassist in, I guess, the world right now. He's a part of the section, which was a session group out that did many of the background music for some of the stars. And this is just a limited list of stars that he's worked with: Reba, Phil Collins, Clint Black, Air Supply, Leanne Rimes, Ray Charles, Dolly, Bette Midler, Neil Diamond, and The Doors. Right now, he's got a really cool photo book out. We'll explain that in a moment. His band is Immediate Family, and he currently has doing some stuff over on YouTube. We've got Leland Sklar on with us right now. How you doing, Leland?
I'm doing really good. You know, under the circumstances that we're all living under, I'm doing the best I can, like everybody else, and trying to stay safe.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've had a bunch of musicians on over the past couple of weeks, and it seems to be the situation where, you know, they're still kind of working on music or whatever, but you know, they're kind of waiting to be able to get back on stage and to be able to perform on stage at some point. I think people want to get out; they want to listen to music live. So hopefully that'll hopefully happen. Hopefully here relatively soon. And I know the bars are kind of being hit as well. I mean, we've got a really good rock bar out here, Vamped, which is run by Danny Coker, which is a really cool club. I don't know if you've ever been to Vamped at all.
No, I haven't been to it. Usually when we were just in Vegas with Phil Collins, like a year ago. Now that was the last time I've been there. So we're usually in and out pretty fast. So not enough time to really enjoy the scene.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, it's kind of interesting scene here, just in terms of rock and roll and all that as well. I think Vamp's probably one of the top rock clubs in town.
Cool.
Most of the stuff is either clubs, actual DJ clubs, or you know, when we get the big acts in like Phil, you know, that's a huge thing as well. I mean, I'm surprised Phil hasn't gotten a residency here yet. I
kind of thought about that too. We all kind of, when we were there, we said, you know, are you ever thinking about doing that? And at that point, we had been on the road for off and on 2.5 years. So I think at that point, he just wanted to get home. And now Genesis was just rehearsing for a tour, and they're ready to go, but everything's sitting in a warehouse waiting for the go ahead. But you know.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, if they do that, there would have to be a stadium tour, and we just opened up the stadium out here, which obviously we can't have any fans out here yet.
Yeah.
We're doing football games out of there now, and Garth was supposed to be performing earlier this year, but when the pandemic happened, that got pushed. Right now, tentatively, it's February, but again, we don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, fingers crossed on that.
That's pretty optimistic to think February.
And up again and for live acts. So I'm very looking forward to that. I'm glad to hear that Phil's out there performing once again. I know he took some time off, so it's great to be able to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you've worked with so many great acts. I mean, tell me first of all, how you ended up becoming kind of a session musician for a lot of these acts that came about.
Yeah, it's in the late 60s. I was in college, and I was a science and art major, and but I was always in bands, and I was in a band called Wolfgang in the very late 60s. And our drummer had a friend named John Fishbeck who owned a Crystal Recording Studios here in LA, and he did like Stevie Wonder's The Key of Life. He produced all of the early Stevie Wonder stuff and engineered it. And he used to come and hang out at our rehearsals. And at one of our rehearsals, he brought a friend of his who had just gotten back from England, and it was James Taylor. And nobody knew who James was yet. And James hung out with us. And then all of a sudden, when he released his James Taylor album, which he had just recorded, he got a gig at the Troubadour out here in LA. And they had Russ Kunkel was going to play drums, and Danny Korchmar was going to play guitar, and Carole King was the piano player, and they needed a bass player. And he remembered me from this rehearsal, and they called me. Peter Asher tracked me down, and I played that gig with them. And I thought it was going to be one gig, and it turned into the rest of my life. You know, James was like the perfect storm at that time. He was the right guy for this new movement in music. And we were very fortunate that Peter Asher, who was producing him and managing him, insisted that our names appear on his albums. And so when people like Jackson Browne and all these other artists that came after James were going in the studio, they would look at James's record as kind of the benchmark, and they would see me and Russ Kunkel and Danny Korchmar, and they started calling us. So kind of like overnight, I went from a college kid to being an in-demand studio musician, having never really been in the studio that much. So it's been an adventure, I'll say that. You had to learn really quick. You were kind of like thrown out of the frying pan into the fire like overnight. And I feel fortunate every day. You know, I love what I do, and I've gotten to work with the greatest people in the world, and I don't ever want it to end. I'll work till my last breath, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, I was thinking about that, the idea that you have to kind of almost think on your feet, because
Yeah.
There's different styles of music that you've worked with. You've worked with country, you've worked with singer-songwriters, folk, rock, all that as well. I mean, how is it for you to kind of start to adapt the bass to different genres and different styles?
Well, first off, you have to listen to a lot of different stuff, so you kind of understand. You know, you have to have big ears in terms of understanding all the different genres and what kind of is demanded of them. But then on the flip side of that, when you get hired, you want to bring you to that also, rather than just copying a style. And it seems that I've somehow found parts in my playing that seem to fit into so many different genres, because I mean, I've been able to go from like the simplest Reba McEntire song to Spectrum with Billy Cobham to doing, you know, jazz fusion. So I've been fortunate, but I think most of my career has been based as a song person. I really love having a song to find parts for that's, you know, really well constructed. And I listen to the songs and really kind of figure out what the song wants from me. I don't impose myself on it. I just want to see what the song's beckoning me to do. And
Yeah, that brings me up into another point.
Yeah.
There's two really cool questions, and I'll kind of bind them together. First of
Yeah.
all, the idea of a basses, obviously, certain guitars sound differently, certain basses obviously sound differently.
Yeah.
There's kind of obviously a mindset in terms of wanting to going to a session and kind of selecting which bass you want. And second, talk a little bit about this Frankenstein bass I was reading about. It's a very interesting kind of a mix. It's very interesting.
Right here. This is it. A real quick synopsis of what's going on here. I had this neck. It was originally a 1962 precision bass neck. I don't really care for precisions as much as jazz. That my first bass, real bass, was a 62 jazz bass. So I had this neck, and I went to John Carruthers, who used to be the guy that did all the repair work at Westwood Music here in LA, which was like the watering hole for all the musicians. And we decided to reshape the neck into a jazz bass neck. Went to Charvel, which was making replacement parts for instruments, and got this Alder precision body. But what we did was these are very early EMG pickups. We put them where jazz pickups would have gone. There's a spot right here where these kind of pickups would have gone originally, but I've got two batteries under there. We flipped these in position. It's got like the first hip shot detuner on this, where you flip this and it drops the E to a D string. So it's like body parts, so that's why I call it Frankenstein, because this was never a real instrument. This was all kinds of pieces that we assembled. And then in I think it was 82, the Dodgers won the World Series. And we went in the studio with them to cut We Are the Champions with the Big Blue Wrecking Crew. And after the session, they were signing baseballs and all kinds of crap for us. And this bass had nothing on it. It was just a blank body. And I said, hey, why don't you sign my bass? And so they signed it. And shortly after that, we ended up with James Taylor at a gig, and Rocky Bleier and Lynn Swann from the Pittsburgh Steelers were there. And they said, oh man, you need football players. So I think Rocky Bleier is right there, and Lynn Swann is down here. And then all of a sudden, it just turned into, there's probably about 400 signatures on the bass, everybody from George Lucas to Clapton, to you kind of name it, Vinnie Colaiuta, all the Jeff Porcaro, so it has a great sentimental value to me because of the signatures on it. But it's really one of the best basses. It's one of those things where you build something and it could either suck or be great. And we were very fortunate that it turned out great. And so that's my kind of go-to bass. We built it around 1973.
It seems like it's very innovative with a lot of the stuff that you've done on that bass. I mean, has that kind of affected some of the basses that we see now out there produced?
Yeah, some companies started reversing the precision pickups like we did on this bass, and because it really made sense. I mean, for anybody that's technically listening to the show, with the precision pickups, they're like two pickups side by side. Now, originally when Leo Fender did it, the pickup half that was under the G and the D string was closest to the bridge, and the A and the E string was closest to the neck. And I thought, by the nature of the tonality of the G and the D string, why would you put the pickup closest to the bridge? Why not put that towards the neck and put the other one of the lower notes towards the bridge, which evened out the sound completely. And it turned out to be really great. And a lot of companies, I've seen them doing basses like that, whether or not this bass affected their decision or it was something that they also came up with, because it seemed very logical to me. The other thing I did with this bass that a number of people have been doing is the frets on the bass are from a mandolin rather than a bass. So they're the smallest fret wire I could put on the bass. So it almost feels like a fretless when I'm playing it, even though it's fretted. And so many bass players that have played the bass went, holy crap, this feels really good, and have changed their basses. And I've got two signature basses, one with a company called Dingwall out of Canada, and that's the 5-string that I use. And then I have a chambered bass that's a signature model built by Warwick in Germany. And both of those basses have mandolin frets on them too. And they, tonally, for some reason, I always tend to lean towards a similar sound, kind of no matter what I'm doing. It's kind of just thick and punchy with enough top end for clarity, but I really do like bass to feel bassy and not, I hear a lot of bass players and they're very trebly and very clicky in their playing, where I like a really rich tone, and it seems to work really well on most genres.
Yeah, is there a certain album or a certain song that you kind of like that kind of showcases your bass more than other albums or songs?
God, yeah, I'd have to think. Almost every one of the things I've ever worked on does that. Certainly the James Taylor catalog or Jackson Browne, it would be great. And Phil Collins. I mean, that bass is on like Another Day in Paradise and One More Night, all the Phil Collins hits. So I used it on Steve Lukather's Ever Changing Times solo album. There's some songs on there like Jammin' with Jesus. So there's a lot of songs. I mean, I've worked on so many, and that bass has probably been on about 85% of what I've recorded in my career. So it's a workhorse.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Now, just going into the studio, obviously you were in the studio, when it was still reel to reel. Now we have digital editing as well. I mean, how was it for you to look back at what was recording and now what is recording, and the kind of the transition we've gotten?
Yeah, it's a very different world for the most part. When I started in the studio, it was always a group of musicians, number one, rather than now so many times now you get called to go put a bass part on a track and you're not really with other musicians, you're with an engineer, and that's about it. But in the early recording, certainly through the 70s into the 80s, it was always a group effort. And I really loved that the most personally, because the energy that happens in a room full of players is really the magic. And that's kind of the juice of the whole thing, because everybody's kicking ideas around. We might be given a song to work on by an artist that really doesn't have a good bridge, and the band would say, well, let's work on that bridge, and we'd end up making it into something, or it didn't have an intro at all, and we thought, God, this song needs an intro. So there was a collaborative effort when we were in the studio then. As things progressed, and the one thing with me is I've never wanted to become the old fart. It's one of those things do change, and you really have to go with change, and not sit there and talk about, all the time what it was once like, unless somebody wants to, is curious about like the difference between analog and digital and that kind of recording. But more and more, it got to the point where you were just going in the studio and they were putting everything on in pieces. The drummer might go in. On some things, I'm like the first guy in, and I'm coming up with bass parts that then they're going to add a drum to it. Like I'm playing to a drum machine and they're going to replace it with real drums, and the guitar player is going to come in later. So it's a little more piecemeal, but in the past few years, there's been more and more sessions being done with live band. And I think it really bodes much better for the music when you can have, at least 2 or 3, 4 musicians in a room kicking ideas back and forth. So, but everybody records differently. During this pandemic, I've been recording at home for the first time in my whole career. People would say, can you put bass part on a song for me? And I would just call a friend who had a studio, and it was an excuse to go have lunch. I'd go over to their house and we would put the bass part on and then go out and grab a pizza or something. But with the pandemic, can't do that anymore. So some people called me and asked me if I could put bass parts on some stuff. So I ended up getting an SSL 2+ interface and plugged into GarageBand, and I've been doing projects for people from home now. And I enjoy it. I mean, I love playing under any circumstance.
Yeah, and one question that came up in the back of my mind is, how do you keep your hands healthy and nimble and all that as well? Because you've been doing this for quite a while.
I'm really terrible to my hands. Like with the book that I've just got today, we've been loading like 30 pallets of books, and my hands are covered in cuts and bandages. For some reason, I always think about doing the right thing after I've done the wrong thing. But I've been fortunate that I haven't really had any arthritis or carpal tunnel or any of those kind of things, which a lot of players have been affected by. So my chops still feel there. I try to play every day. And certainly like with my YouTube channel, most of the time I'm playing along with songs I've recorded to show the bass parts. So I'm trying to keep my chops up. It's hard during a period like this. I mean, I've never been off the road this long, or in a lockdown ever. And just playing at home isn't like playing on stage, man. When you walk out on stage and you got that energy of the audience and the sound levels and pressures are big, you dig in hard. When you're sitting at home playing, I can play, but it's not that same intensity. So I'm trying to stay focused so that when the time does come and we can go start gigging again, that I'm up to speed at it, and I'm not like going, oh crap, my chops are gone kind of situation.
Yeah, to be able to have a huge audience, and have that energy. I mean, that's one thing that, that will drive you through a concert, and even for a couple hours.
It's magical, man. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was just going to mention, I mean, just hearing about what you do with your hands and all that, I was just reminded of Ringo Starr's, I got blisters on me fingers at the end of there. It's
so true. I mean, right now, I'm sitting here, you can see my thumb I smashed it on a pipe, and I'm about to lose my nail. It's, it's all messed up, but thank God it's on the backside of my neck. So I'm not, for a while it was really sore, but I've always got some kind of little injuries. I've had a lot of serious cuts and stuff in my hands and some like tendon damage and stuff, but nothing has really compromised my playing. I've healed from every dumb thing I've done. So I've been lucky, I guess.
Well, speaking of the book, I mean, let's talk a little bit about it. It's a very interesting kind of photo book. Tell me a little bit about the idea behind it, and a little bit about the book itself and how it came together.
Yeah, I'll show you real quick. It's sitting right here. Here's the cover of the book, and then when you turn the book around, and it's 6,000 photographs of every kind of character you could imagine, all the musicians and everybody giving me the finger. That's the whole thing. There's 6,000 pictures. I've got 12,000 shots of people flipping me off, and it's everybody that you could. I mean, I got Charlie Watts and Jeff Beck and Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Lukather and Lyle Lovett and James Taylor and Phil Collins and movie stars, but there's a lot of just people on the street that I meet. And the way it happened was in 2004, we were doing Phil Collins's first final farewell tour. And there was a bass tech that was hired for the tour for me. And I've never really used a bass tech before. I pretty much always handled my own gear on the road. I just like being engaged with my equipment. And he came in totally prepared to really do everything. And he said, "What do you need?" And I said, "Basically nothing." And we were on the road for like a year. And so we would always joke with each other about like, "What are you doing?" He's going, "Nothing. You don't give me anything to do." Well, towards the end of the tour, there was talk that Phil was going to retire at that point. And we had about 100 people on the road and with the crew and everybody. And I was thinking, I may never see a lot of these people again because they were from the UK, from Europe, from kind of everywhere. So I thought, I'm going to take a picture of everybody and make a little photo album for myself of everybody, just for my memories. And the first person I went to was Steve, my bass tech, and he was sitting at his computer. And I said, "Hey, Steve, give me a smile." And he's working, and he just goes. So I take the picture of him giving me the finger, and I went, "This actually looks pretty cool." So I went and got Phil, his manager, all the band, the crew, the caterers, truck drivers, and I tucked it away for a couple of years. And then when I went on the road with Toto, I thought, I'm going to grab these guys too. And so I got up to a couple of hundred pictures at that point. And then it took on a life of its own. People heard about it. I would go to the NAMM show and people would come running up to me and just going, "I'm supposed to do this, aren't I?" And it's just become a thing where I just amassed all these pictures. And over the years, people have been saying, "You got to make a book, man. You got to make a book. This is so much fun." And with the pandemic hitting, I just said, the hell with it. I'm going to do it this time. I met a guy who has an art studio, basically. And we got together and put this book together. And I put the website together, and I'm getting orders around the clock for this thing. People are buying it for, today a guy came over and he bought it for Randy Jackson, the bass, from American Idol, the bass player, for his birthday present and stuff. So word's getting out, and it's a lot of fun though. I wanted to have something because it's been such a dark time for people. I wanted to have something that would put a smile on your face. And it's not just photos, it's kind of thematic, there's a voyage of discovery. And I didn't like put in like a celebrity section. To me, everybody's a celebrity in their own way. So it's one of these things you look through and you go, "God, there's Jay Leno." And he's like right next to somebody else in there. And there's Charles Barkley. And, so it's, Lawrence Fishburne and Jeremy Irons and Jane Seymour. I've been fortunate in my travels. I've met so many people, and everybody's been fun, about doing this. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a big ass book. It weighs 6 pounds, and there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I mean, it is fitting for 2020. I mean, it is kind of fitting because people hate this year and they really want to flip it off anyway.
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
it's very good to have it. For those of you listening on just the audio version of this, it's called
Everybody
Loves Me, right?
Yeah, Everybody Loves Me.
Yeah, Everybody Loves Me. So make sure you guys check that out. Is it over on Amazon?
No, I'm handling it all myself at this point, and then maybe at some point I'll talk to, like Amazon or there's a couple of publishing companies that have been contacting me saying they might be interested in taking on. So, but right now I'm just enjoying. I'm filling every order myself. The books. If somebody orders it signed, I'm signing tons of books and shipping them. So I'm busy as hell. But if they want to check it out, it was weird. I was going to put together a website and I went to look up lelandsklar.com or leesklar.com, and somebody's taken those websites, probably hoping that I would someday come to them and want them and then they could sell them to me. So I said, screw that. And we put together, my website is lelandsklar'sbeard.com. And that's where the book is. And I've got t-shirts on there too that have my beard on the front of them. And people are now sending me pictures of them with my beard. They're wearing my beard. So it's all, everything's for fun, man. I just want people to smile and have a good time during these very dark and terrible times that we're living in.
I should mention, for those of you who are listening to this audibly, I mean, Leland looks like Santa Claus, actually. So it's kind of, again, almost fitting it that it's kind of happening right around this time of year. So it's great to be able to do that as well. I mean, yeah, it's amazing as well. What other projects are going on with you right now? You said you have a YouTube channel right now. You're trying to perform as much as you can. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, it happened by accident when we finished Phil Collins's tour. I had some guys writing to me going, man, we saw you like in South America or Europe or something. And we were playing a lot of stadiums. So they said, we had a really good front of house guy and the people could hear it. But some guys were writing going, I'd love more detail on your parts. It'd be great to hear. So I ended up having our front of house guy send me our show from Adelaide, Australia. And what I did was I plugged a little Bose speaker into my laptop, put the show in my laptop, and I have a bass amp sitting here on the floor next to me. So I would play the song from the show, but I was putting the bass, the loudest thing people would be listening to. They could hear the song, but they could hear the bass part, completely note for note. And about 3 songs into the show, which was 3 days into this, people started writing going, man, we love your YouTube channel. And I go, what are you talking about? And they go, oh man, your new YouTube channel. I go, what YouTube channel? I mean, I was just trying to post a couple of instructional things. And the next thing I know, I've got 142,000 people on the website, on my channel now. And I haven't missed a day since March. I've posted something every single day, a song. And sometimes I'll just play the song and talk about the session and who was on it and experiences that we had in the studio. But I formed a clubhouse on the channel too that people can join. And I do 2 live streams a month for a couple hours each time. And it's become a really great community of people they've all become friends and they talk to each other. And so that's been great. It's something, I'm doing things that I never anticipated ever doing, because at the end of February, I had a year's worth of work ahead of me. And then all of a sudden, like every other player, it all disappeared. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to sit around and do nothing. So I kept looking at opportunities of things to do. And then we have a band called The Immediate Family. And The Immediate Family, basically, when we go back to the beginning of James Taylor with Danny Korchmar and Russ Kunkel and myself and Waddy Wachtel, The Immediate Family is us. We've been together for 50 years. And we're not the section or what the original incarnations of things from the early days. And then we brought in another friend who I've known for 15 years named Steve Postel. And We've got an album that's going to be released at the beginning of the year. We've got a couple of albums that we did, a live album in Japan and a Japanese release. We've got a new video out right now. We were telling people at one point, we're a cover band that only plays originals, which is really what the band was, because, like Danny Korchmar wrote like Dirty Laundry and All She Wants to Do Is Dance with Don Henley and New York Minute. Waddy Wachtel co-wrote Werewolves of London and all these songs with Zevon. So there's, it's a really unique group of characters. And I've never been prouder than to be in a band with these guys. I mean, for the fact, and it's really aptly named being the immediate family, because we kind of are. We've known each other like a half a century, never had a fight, no arguments. We just play music. So I'm really excited, and we're just waiting. Oh, and the other thing is Denny Tedesco, who did the Wrecking Crew movie about the great studio musicians of the 60s, is doing a documentary film about us right now too. And so there's a lot going on, during this period.
Yeah, I was thinking in the back of my mind that, it would be a really good documentary, because I did see the Wrecking Crew one, and I would be very happily interested in seeing one about you and the guys and immediate family as well. So I look forward to that to coming out hopefully really soon. And like I said, I really hope that things open up, because I want to hear you play out here in Vegas. And again, I'm pretty sure that gigs will come up once everything kind of calms down, and I think people are anxious to come out here. I mean, I think it's going to be like a champagne bottle once things open up again, because I think people are going to be coming out here in just droves because they want to get out. They want to get out now. So
they're so anxious. They're so anxious for live everything. They want, I mean, it's understandable, but people have to be patient, and that's the hard part, because every time they start to push it, then the numbers go back up again, and we end up backsliding. So it's going to happen, but it's just got to happen safely, because the last thing you want to see is people dying. It's so tragic.
Yeah, I mean, as Tom Petty said, waiting is the hardest part. So we have to keep on waiting. But I want to mention Leland Sklar's Beard. That's where you can get the book, and it looks like an entertaining book. If you guys need to get a last minute Christmas gift, please feel free to do that as well. Mike and Leland said he would be more than happy to sign the books if you request that as well. Definitely check out his YouTube channel as well. I'm pretty sure Leland Sklar will have a link to that, right?
Yeah, you should have all the info there. I think Eileen would have sent everything over. Chances are at this point that the post office is cutting off for Christmas. So, tell them the book is an annual event. So, the idea of getting out to Christmas at this point is just really impossible, because I've been talking to the post office, and they said they're so swamped. And after the things that were done to the post office during the election, so the book's there, and if anybody orders it, they'll get the book. But for Christmas is difficult now because of the post office shutting it off. Yeah,
I mean, that's sad to be able to hear, but I mean, but still, buy the book. I mean, it is the personification of 2020 if you really think about it. So please get the book as well. Leland, it's just absolutely amazing to be able to talk to you. We'll have to talk to you sometime next year. I still got plenty of questions for you, but I'm not going to take all of your time. And hopefully I'll see you up here in Vegas performing at some point.
I would absolutely love it. And I love talking to you. So anytime you ever want to talk, I'm happy to come back and spend time with you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Leland.
It's a pleasure. You take care and stay safe.